Yeah, she understands the assignment, full out, full stop. I hope that like the Tony people, the Tony nominators and committees will think of her. I think that they just made the first eligibility rulings of the season, and I think there was something in there about
people who play Tanya.
Well,
a specific ruling.
There's
a
special
carve-out ruling just for her, actually.
There should be.
Excellence in playing Tanya.
Welcome to Critical Darling, the show that celebrates all the hot takes and big feels of the latest and greatest shows lighting up Broadway. I'm your host, Andrew Cole, and I am so pleased to welcome as my guest host today, the one and only Ben Grossman. Ben is an advertising executive by day and a Broadway aficionado by night. He first saw Mamma Mia in 1999, the same year it premiered on the West End, on a vacation with 3 generations of his family. The show instantly became something of a familial touchstone, a favorite of his brother, mother, and grandmother alike. He's since seen the show across multiple cities, continents, and interpretations, including a celebrated 6-year run at the Mandalay Bay in Las Vegas and a high camp 6-year run at Act 2 PB Theater in Puerto Vallarta. His cultural destiny was achieved when his Diva Supreme, Cher, appeared in one of the greatest achievements of international cinema, Mamma Mia, Here We Go Again, and proceeded to release her album of ABBA covers, Dancing Queen. Her 2019 concert tour is a cultural milestone in his life, as is the most recent remount of Mamma Mia on Broadway, which we're talking about today. Ladies, gentlemen, and darlings across the globe, please help me welcome Ben Grossman.
Hello, it's so good to be with you, and what a time to be alive, as Mamma Mia returns to Broadway. Nothing could be better.
Truly. We already know we're going to love it, right? I feel like when they announced this revival was coming, I distinctly remember, we're on texts together all the time, but I remember in very short order, I think a text came from you and it was like, I'm going to be at the first performance and y'all are welcome to join me if you want.
Absolutely. This is important enough to make it a top priority, regardless of what other plans were in place. And I've been back several times since. I'll be back in a couple weeks. We need to pack in as many viewings as possible during the 6 months of precious time we have with it on Broadway.
I love it. I've enjoyed this show for a long time, and I'm sure that I would have made it at some point to this most recent production, but because you were so zealous about it and so excited, I caught the fever. And like we went to the very first public performance of this new mounting of it. It was a lovely Saturday night. We had dinner before with our friends and significant others, and it was a blast and kind of like maybe an ideal way to experience a show like this.
That is what Mamma Mia in my life has been all about. It has certainly an intense appeal to me, but also it's been so fun to share with other people. You mentioned in your intro the role that it's played in my family life, but also in my friends. And it feels like the kind of thing that everyone can just agree on and kind of forget their troubles and lean into and enjoy. And there's kind of something for everyone there, which is, I think, part of what's made it so successful and so enduring. Since, I remember in 1999 when I first saw it, it was like a mega hit. I vividly remember, obviously it was before StubHub and all of our mobile technology, but I remember going up to, an old school scalper window to buy like nosebleed seats while my family and I were in London. This was totally unplanned, but it was so buzzed about that we thought, well, we're in London, we have to see this, and probably paid bazooka bucks, which today are normal prices for theater, to see it in 99, and have cared very little about what I've paid ever since to see it, because it's very worth whatever you do.
I love it. We'll get into all of that goodness, but let's first set the stage. I'm going to set up the show for our listeners and viewers who may not be familiar with it. So obviously today we are diving into the sunny, beachy, feel-good world of Mamma Mia. It's the jukebox musical built around the songs of ABBA. It's currently playing at the Winter Garden Theater, where it began performances on August 2nd, officially opened August 14th, and plays a limited run through February 1st. The music and lyrics were written by ABBA's very own Benny Andersson and Bjorn Ulvaeus. I hope I said that right. The book is by Katherine Johnson, direction is by Philidia Lloyd, and choreography is by Anthony Van Lost. This, of course, is a revival of a Manhattan mainstay. The original Broadway production of Mamma Mia ran from October 2001 to September 2015, first at the Winter Garden, where this new version is, and then later at the Broadhurst Theater. Yes, iconic. I love that theater. It played for 14 years with a total of 5,773 performances, which was enough to anoint it the 9th longest running show in Broadway history. Not too shabby. This production is in many ways a sit-down of the most recent North American touring company of Mamma Mia. So it not only transfers the majority of that traveling company directly from the road, but it's also giving the lion's share of them their Broadway debuts, which is just really exciting to see. Christine Sherrill plays Donna Sheridan, the spirited single mother running a tavern on a Greek island. Amy Weaver is Sophie Sheridan, the bright and hopeful daughter who's about to get married. Carly Sokolov appears as Rosie, one of Donna's best friends from the wild days of their girl group era. Jalen Steele is Tanya, the other former dynamo friend of Donna's, who is glamorous and cheeky and everything you want her to be. Victor Wallace takes on Sam Carmichael, one of the 3 possible fathers, along with Jim Newman as Bill Austin and Rob Marnell as Harry Bright. And then Grant Reynolds appears as Sky, Sophie's fiance. If you're not familiar with it, the plot follows Sophie, who is getting ready to tie the knot on a gorgeous Greek island, as she dreams of having her father walk her down the aisle. But here's the twist. She doesn't actually know who her father is. Ruh-roh. After finding entries in Donna's old diaries, Sophie realizes there are 3 men who could be her dad. And without telling Donna, Sophie invites all 3 to the wedding. Cue old love, youthful rebellion, friend reunions, and the glorious catalog of ABBA songs weaving through it all. So the stage is set, and the first part of our conversations on this show involve hot takes. This is a section where we just break down the show in general. We talk about the performances, the direction, the design, the energy, the music, the audience reactions, everything that we kind of thought during the show and our impressions of it. So Ben, I'll kick it over to you first. What are some of your hot takes on Mamma Mia?
Well, one of the things you mentioned is the gentleman who plays Sam. And one of the little-known facts about him as he comes to Broadway is that he's actually been with the show for quite a long time. He originally appeared as Sky in the Vegas production, the love interest of Sophie. And then aged into the father role by the time he made it to Broadway, and then has been on tour with it as well. So one thing that's very joyful is to kind of see all of these people. You know, the show's been around for so long that tons of people have moved through it and gone on to do great things. Some have stuck with the show, but it's really fun to see it as kind of this culminating vehicle for people who have danced around Mamma Mia. I know on opening night, the night we were there, they hosted a reunion for dozens of cast members who had been on Broadway and Mamma Mia before. So the energy was high. The first night we saw it, I've since been back. And it really is a fun production that I think maintains a lot of the energy of the original, and certainly kind of amps it up a little bit from the tour production, which, as you mentioned, this is a sit down of. I had been to Boston to see the Broadway in Boston sponsored production of it. So I had seen this cast literally on tour before they sat down on Broadway. And I think we've definitely amped things up a little bit for this production. You know, you asked for hot takes, and I was going to say that the one thing that hasn't really been amped up for the Broadway production since the tour is the lighting and set. You know, when it tours as a show, we actually get a notch down version of many aspects of the show. The set is famously or infamously pretty simple, which was an initial production choice that's been intact since 1999, mostly because they wanted to create room on stage for a lot of the big dance numbers and for the full cast to kind of come out in full force and not have the set in the way. I will say, though, that some of the sacrifices that were made for the touring production in terms of scale of certain set pieces, but especially the lighting, ring a little bit hollow in the Winter Garden. And there's definitely some room left that maybe more modern lighting and production could fill up, but still a lovely time with that said.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. I think that, you know, I've actually this is the only the second time I've seen a production of Mamma Mia. The first time I saw a touring company back in, I don't want to age myself, but it was back in my college days, and I was working at the Tennessee Performing Arts Center in Nashville, and the tour came through. And so that was my first time experiencing it live. And I don't remember a ton of details about it, but I have to imagine the set and lighting design were almost exactly the same with this. It felt very similar
Probably.
to this. Yeah. And then seeing it on Broadway for the first time with you in this production, that did strike me as well. I was like, oh, well, they're not trying to reinvent the wheel on this little unit set, are they? And I think that's fine. I think that there's like, for me, there is a certain type, or maybe even, I'll use the word caliber of show, where I really do care more about the production design. And there's something about this show that, like, you know, using the word serviceable is maybe like a bit more negative than I would intend it. Like, it's all that it needs to be, right? Like, I'm not going to Mamma Mia for earth-shattering set design, but I did clock it. I was like, oh, we're not gussing it up at all for Broadway. Okay, that's fine.
No, like, look, I think that it over delivers in other areas. I think the plot is, yes, simple, but is actually like infinitely followable and kind of interesting, which is more than can be said for some of the more recent jukebox musicals that either have a totally unoriginal story or one that's kind of patched together. And I think that the star of this show has always been the music first and foremost. I mean, by leveraging the ABBA hits, as the poster ads often say, you already know you're going to love it. And I think there are decisions that are made to not do much to get in the way of the hits and the megawatt performances that come from the cast. But certainly if it were produced for the first time today, we would not have kind of shaky and simplistic lights that just overlap in an effort to create an effect where you can tell exactly where one light ends and the next one begins. But there are still like breakout joyful moments. Famously for Super Trooper, they actually use Super Trooper lights and create all of the effect that you want from a real ABBA show, as well as for the big finale. So it's not that they're not capable of doing this. It's just a choice not to throughout the show, kind of upgrade the production level.
Wait, what are Super Trooper lights? I'm not initiated to know.
The song Super Trooper, as originally concocted by ABBA as a hit single, is actually about a type of spotlight called Super Troopers. Like it's a lighting term, and that's why the lyric in it is like, Super Trooper, the lights are going to find me. It's literally talking about someone's star power and these Super Trooper like beam lights zeroing in on them.
Of course they would have a song about that. I didn't know that it was about lighting. I probably should have if I had listened closer. For some reason, whenever I like that song a lot, first of all.
It's great, yes.
It's great. Do you know the movie Starship Troopers from like the late 90s?
Yes.
It has nothing to do with this stylistically, but whenever I would hear the song Super Trooper, I'm like, oh, is that like a Starship Trooper, but not? So thank you for schooling me.
You know, before I knew, I always thought it was kind of a description of these people, like they're these ascendant kind of diva personalities, Super Troopers, but it turns out no.
That works too, yeah.
You know, and like, this is part of the delight, I think, of Mamma Mia and the ABBA songbook overall, is that camp is already like baked into many of these songs. But then one of my other favorite subtleties of the creation of Mamma Mia that really has not been held on to for other jukebox musicals is that they started the same place most jukebox musicals did, which was no lyric changes, like preserve the original IP. That was the mandate when Mamma Mia was in development in the late 90s. But because the original members of ABBA were so close to production that as they saw it evolve, they were actually willing to embrace some lyric changes that I think actually further campify it up and are really, really fun. So, you know, if you're talking to someone who never knew ABBA before Mamma Mia, they'll take these lyrics as like the way they've always been. But then if you really think about it, like it makes no sense. Like, in Chiquitita, you know, there's the line like, I've never seen such sorrow, and then in your eyes, and the wedding is tomorrow. well, that's very plot oriented here. That's a change that's been made to the original lyrics to kind of fit the show. And then my other like favorite lyric change that I just think I always look forward to hearing it is in Under Attack. There's this lyric that originally was, "He's on my track, my chasing lover." But instead they change it to, "They're on my track, 3 dads, 1 lover." A very direct description of what's happening in the show, which I think like that level of ability to make some lyrical changes, I think actually helps these songs move the plot forward quite a bit.
Yeah, I would agree. I'm not familiar. I know the song Dancing Queen, and I would say that before I saw that production of Mamma Mia that I saw in Tennessee years ago, I wasn't really familiar with any other ABBA music. And you're hitting on something that I think is pretty important to both the history of Mamma Mia, but also kind of jukebox musicals. And that, yes, this was one of the mega musicals of its day when it first premiered, but it was also kind of the first in this wave of jukebox musicals, or maybe it was like one of the first most prominent examples of a jukebox musical, like taking a collection of songs that had already been existent in pop culture and then writing a story around it. And I think that like, since we got Mamma Mia originally, there have been lots of good jukebox musicals and lots of bad ones, but in many ways, this one kind of set the tone and set the standard. And I really like everything that you were just hitting on of it's not the story of ABBA, the group.
Correct.
They took the catalog and they built this very effervescent, fun plot around it that doesn't take itself too seriously, right? Which is kind of like what ABBA music is to me. And then it sounds like from what you're saying that the creators weren't too precious, that they were inflexible with their lyrics. Like they wanted them to serve the plot.
Look, like this was in development for a long time, and I think that benefited it because a lot of jukebox musicals now are really just a matter of like, can we get the rights? And then once we have them, like bring this thing to stage really quickly and you know, mostly as a financial exploit, which I don't blame anyone for. But the story of this actually highly relevant with the Broadway season that's in swing now. Judy Kramer had worked with the ABBA members on Chess in the early 80s. So she was actually in the original creation team of Chess, which is now making its Broadway return with the revival. Had this idea in 1982 to make a musical based on ABBA music. I think she was originally inspired by the song The Winner Takes It All, one of the more melancholy songs. Had this idea in 1982. ABBA members did not want to give her the ability to use the music. She continued thinking about it, continued trying to develop it, and then got them to agree to even consider it. Multiple plots were actually written for this musical, and the books were rejected until they found the right one. And Mamma Mia was not always Mamma Mia either. For a long time, the show was called Summer Night City, which is another ABBA song, another ABBA hit that doesn't even appear in the musical beyond a motif now. But Summer Night City was one, the name of the musical, and B, heavily featured. But you know, even the fact that it started with that name in previews and then that song and that title were done away with shows you how much kind of care, love, and, you know, thought went into the ultimate creation of this. And I think it benefited from it. And it's one of the things that made it more durable.
Yeah, no kidding. I didn't know that tidbit about her being involved in Chess. That's really cool.
Especially now. Like, they're both on Broadway.
Yeah, when it rains, it pours, right? For like Benny and Bjorn, they're having a moment on
a royalty field day. Yeah,
a royalty field day. So I want to go back a little bit to what you were saying. You had clocked Sam Carmichael, played by Victor Wallace, in this production. Do you remember
Sky? Yes.
Yeah,
I remember seeing him.
You did see him
in Vegas as Sky. Yes. And everyone joked at the time when he did the Vegas to Broadway. I think he was originally in the supporting cast when he moved to Broadway. Not in a. I don't think he was in a lead role. But then he kind of got promoted to Sam, and everyone, like, the joke was how quickly he had gone from Sky to Sam. Probably non-chronological casting went on there.
Yeah, and I will say, like, of the 3 dads, he reads the youngest. Like, I was kind of thinking to myself, like, is he old enough to be playing Sam but he pulls it off.
Still, well, look, he was promoted. He was in the original Broadway run, so over 10 years ago. So
As Sam or as
what
Sky?
a compliment to. No, as Sam. He played Sam on Broadway.
Okay. He's great.
Isn't that crazy?
All three of the dads, let me look at my playbill. I think it's correct to say that the three of them all have previous Broadway credits. Jim Newman, Victor Wallace, and Rob Marnell. Yeah. So they're seasoned, right? And like, I feel like they know exactly what they're doing in this show.
Yeah, they know what they're doing, and those roles are fun. I mean, there's not that much pressure on them. The women really carry the show and have most of the vocal powerhouse performances, as was true of original ABBA, right?
Yeah.
Like the men are in more supporting roles, and I think they get to have fun. But then the casting of like Donna and the Dynamos prominently featured in my pin collection, which I picked up the merch stand of this production. That casting, you have to be really thoughtful about. I mean, Donna carries a ton of numbers. And in this production, I mean, Tanya really, for me, was the standout performance of the entire show. And this is something that I think has evolved quite a bit over the course of Mamma Mia productions overall is, Tanya was always a camp queen. She was always supposed to be like kind of the tall, skinny one, infamously like married and divorced many times. But they've really leaned into casting her as this kind of sassy, experienced woman. And they've given her more liberty over time, I think, to have fun with the role and to be a little bit more of a cougar. And that really did something for me in this particular production. Like, powerhouse voice, great personality, took her times and created her own moments. I think, Tanya, for me, was a runaway performance in this show.
I'm so glad you brought her up. Her name is Jalen Steele. And blessings abound with her performance. I want to start the Tony campaign now because she is so crowd pleasing in this role.
So good.
She's like kind of the reason to go see it. Like if you're thinking of seeing it, but like you're on the fence, like she's just really good. Like hysterical, hits all her marks.
She knows exactly what she's doing too.
Yeah, she understands the assignment, full out, full stop. I hope that like the Tony people, the Tony nominators and committees will think of her when it comes time.
I think we had to even verify when we were talking after the show if they were going to be eligible, didn't we? Like we're like, does this 6-month sit down of a national tour?
It does.
Count? And so we know it counts.
Yeah, and I think I'll look it up after this, but I think that they just made the first eligibility rulings of the season, and I think there was something in there about, let me get the woman's name who plays Donna correct.
People who play Tanya.
Well,
a specific ruling.
There's a special Tony
ruling just for her, actually.
There should be. Okay, so Christine Sherrill.
Tanya.
Yes. Christine Sherrill, who plays Donna, I think they made, like, the ruling is like, if you're not above the title, you have to get a special ruling that you would be considered as a lead actor. Otherwise, you would be considered a supporting actor unless a special ruling's made. So because like Donna doesn't sit above the title in like any production of Mamma Mia, they ruled that like Christine Sherrill is eligible for like leading actress in a musical. And so I think what that means is like, yes, it's on the radar and on the, potential docket to be considered. I don't think that this is the type of show that like those types of awards would typically consider, but I think Jalen's performance is so good, I would love to see her nominated.
She should totally get the nom. And I have to say, like, Christine is fine. I had seen her on tour, and she carries the role, and she's done it for a long time. But the second time I went to see this mounting of Mamma Mia, Emily Croft, her understudy, was in.
Oh.
And I actually think she gives an excellent performance. I think she's a little bit fresher in the role, so she's really feeling the emotional beats. Her voice isn't as tired, which helps when you're having to belt 8 times a week. But I highly recommend, if Christine is out and you have a chance to see Emily, it's worth it.
I love that. I always love seeing a show. If I've seen the show with the original company once, then I delight in sing an understudy. Sometimes when I roll into a show and I get an understudy for the first time, I don't, because I've seen enough shows, I'm excited to see what that is, but I always like the original reference point of like, okay, who was originally cast in this? But it's a good call out for all of the swings and understudies who keep Broadway going. Like, they're supremely talented. They can carry the show as well. I love that you got to see her.
Yeah, it was really fun. And like those performances really come to life for me. Like one of my favorite scenes in the whole show, and I do like many of them, but I think that like Emily's chemistry with, is it Jalen who plays Tanya?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Jalen. Like that all comes together in what I think is the best scene of the show, which is in Donna's bedroom. It's the sequence that starts with Chiquitita, this kind of melancholy song from the ABBA catalog that I think initially really inspired the musical. You know, she's down, she's upset by the presence of the three possible dads, and her two besties are there to cheer her up, and you know, they're kind of circling the bed and trying to rouse her. The move from Chiquitita then into one of the biggest hits, which is Dancing Queen, is just so iconic. I love like all of the prop work that happens between the three friends in that, whether it's banana boob tassels, whether it's a hairdryer is a microphone. It's just really joyful, and like I think one of the best kind of mood swings in a musical that there is. And you know, the audience and Donna are delighted by the time Donna and the Dynamos are kind of revived and singing Dancing Queen in full effect. It's a delight.
I love that. And I'm trying to remember, because I can picture them in the bedroom. So remind me, they sing Chiquitita in street clothes, and then they transition to singing Dancing Queen with all of these like found props. And then in the middle of Dancing Queen, does it like shift to the show? Or no, they sing Super Trooper.
No. Super Trooper is the show.
Okay.
With the Super Trooper light on her. So if you remember, it goes dark and then the light comes on and they do Super Trooper. Blah, 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 blah. Kind of a cappella. But no, Dancing Queen is a fully realized number just using found objects. They pull out the trunk from under Donna's bed. They find the old poster. They find the feather boas. And they're kind of off to the races. And it's so cute. It's so, so sweet. And I feel like that is the time that you see the bond between these three women in a way that you never really see it with Sophie and her friends. Like, those are kind of underdeveloped characters overall. Like, you can tell they kind of clearly cut some work with Sophie and her friends to have like a lateral bond between the three friends and three friends. But I think that Chiquitita to Dancing Queen is when you really appreciate who Donna, Rosie, and Tanya are. And it gives us, like, you know, this fabulousness, too.
It's true. Well, I want to say something about the two friends, Sophie's two friends, in a second. But I'll comment on what you just said about the Chiquitita and the Dancing Queen scene. There's something that I actually really like about the most famous song in ABBA's catalog and also this show, Dancing Queen, not being in the full performative Super Trooper in the costumes lights. Like, it's actually, that's like a microcosm of why this show I think works, is that it's like, it's informal, it's silly, like we're just gal pals having a good time. And the fact that they would like give that staging to that big of a song, I think works and makes sense for this show.
And deeply relatable, right? Like, when we were there, I feel like we were surrounded by moms and their daughters, like, and I'm talking little girls who were probably not alive in 1999 when this first came out.
Yeah.
And that is such a fan truth, right? Or even a non-fan truth of like how people initially hear Dancing Queen and feeling your oats in your own bedroom, just listening to the song and acting it out. And I think you're right. That's what makes it accessible. You don't need to be in spandex and a leotard in order to perform it. And I think that's too what like led, you know, it was a Broadway thing that the audience at the end dances in the aisles. Like, people feel it's that accessible that they can get into the performance too.
Agreed. And that's actually starting to bleed into our next section. So I'll transition there in just a second, but I want to quickly comment on, okay, so Sophie's two friends, I had to look it up at the Playbill because they get no screen time. Allie and Lisa.
Allie and Lisa,
And
yes.
I have it's like a mildly funny story about that production that I saw in Tennessee years ago. I was the editor of my college newspaper at the time. And so I covered all the Broadway shows that came to the Performing Arts Center there. And there's this one girl, I'm going to forget her name, but she was so lovely. She played, I think it was Allie. I think she played Allie. No, I think she played Lisa. Anyway. She had
Can't even tell them apart, honestly.
She had gone to my school and like was out of school for like a couple of years. So like I got to interview her before, and then the feature ran before the tour came. And in hindsight, I think I asked her very probing questions about like, so what was your motivation for Lisa? Like, how do you approach this role? And like, tell me a little bit about, and I'm sure she was like, she's got like 3 lines.
Literally none.
Yeah. Which doesn't in any way, that's not to de-emphasize the importance of that track or that those people's work that do that role. It's just sort of to your point of like, oh, like they kind of set up Sophie with her 2 friends at the beginning. And then they've got Donna and her 2 friends that all have a lot of development. And then they've got the 3 suitors. It's like the 2 Sophie friends and then the 2 Sky friends. They're sort of just like, they're there.
Yeah.
They're having their own show somewhere else. Like I would be curious to know what that show is. It's probably like a very fun, sexy show, but we don't get to see it.
But we know it's not the sequel because the movie took care of that for us. So maybe it's going to come after the sequel.
Maybe it will.
Movie number 3 will be all about Allie and Lisa.
I hope.
Well, Sky's friends, I don't know. Is it Pepper? And I couldn't name the other ones.
Pepper gets a minute with Tanya because he's like the one that's trying to
Pepper
seduce.
Has his moment. I couldn't even name you the other ones, but they do wear bikinis, which is exciting.
Eddie is the other one.
Oh, Eddie, yes.
So
it's to quote Donna, her general help that is no help at all. That is how she describes them. But back to Lisa and Allie for a second. They do open the show.
That's what I'm saying. It's like they need more of a moment. Yeah. Like they set it up being like, this is going to be a show about these 3 ladies, or at least a little bit. And then it's like not at all about the other 2.
Yeah. Something I love about the original cast recording is they include quite a bit of dialogue from the show on it. So you can really track the plot. And there's this wonderful component that's still in a British accent, obviously, because it started on the West End, where she's like, and I've got 3 possible dads. And it's just such a iconic setup of the rest of the show, but it's included in the intro of Honey Honey, and it's excellent.
It's like dun dun dun, 3 possible dads.
Mm-hmm. There's a lot of great kind of overacting in the original cast recording, which I am in love with.
The best.
Yeah, it's so good.
Well, that concludes the hot take section. You brought so much to it, Ben. Thank you for doing your homework. We're going to now transition into the Big Feels section. So Big Feels is exploring the show's deeper meaning, themes, and perhaps like intended audiences and who it hits with. So I think we started to touch on that like a little bit when we were talking about the Dancing Queen scene, but you tell me, like, what are your like overall Big Feels thoughts about this show?
Look, it resonated with me in 1999, obviously. Like, I joke about it now, and I do really like the show. I'm not saying it's a work of art, but it is like infinitely enjoyable and resonant. And over the 26 years, I've thought a lot about why. And, it's interesting. It came out in 1999. There was not a lot of queer visibility in the media landscape overall, nor was the concept of chosen family like heavily out there like it is now. And I think that this show captures chosen family in a really wonderful, fabulous, joyful way. And it's kind of all about that. You have all these examples in the show of, questioning in a positive way about whether your definition of family needs to be or should be limited to kind of your birth family or your blood connection. So, you obviously have the entire plot of the show about Sophie not knowing who her dad is, initially thinking it was very important to figure out who her biological father is. But in the end, and by the end, mild spoiler alert, not that there's like heavy plot to hang on to in this, but by the end, I think she realizes that it doesn't really matter who her biological dad is. And it's actually wonderful to have the 3 possible dads function as basically her 3 dads. And like, what a benefit to have these three men in her life who love her and care about her and are willing to kind of metaphorically adopt her. But then you have all these other like less direct examples of chosen family too. You have Donna with Rosie and Tanya, these girlfriends who she grew up with and kind of who raised her as a woman, who she's kind of kept in touch with throughout the course of her life. They feel like major familial touchstones with her. You know, this is a wedding of her daughter, and we don't hear about any blood relatives who have come here for the wedding. It's her two girlfriends and then three possible men who may have been part of birthing her daughter. But it's not like there are any other blood relatives there for Sophie or for Skye, for that matter. And then, of course, you have the lightly featured, Lisa, and did we decide the other one's name is Allie, Sophie's girlfriends who are there. So it's actually all chosen family who descend upon this island and you know, who are kind of celebrated, which I think is wonderful. And then, you know, you even have these kind of subversive themes throughout the show where kind of traditional family is dismissed. Like there's a line about who Sophie is named after, and it turns out that it's one of the dad's Aunt Sophias. And there's this line like, I always heard that her money went to family. And the suggestion is kind of that maybe it didn't go to her direct family. You know, Tanya is very dismissive of, I think she's had 3 husbands, all of whom she's now divorced. Rosie has never decided to get married. So anyway, long story short, there are lots of examples of chosen family throughout this show, and actually relatively few examples of kind of biological family. And I think that was progressive, and it still resonates with me, and I think still resonates today for a lot of people, certainly New York audiences.
Yeah, I agree with that. I hadn't really thought that deeply about the chosen family theme, although I will say, like, one of the things that I took away from it on this viewing was just that bond between Donna and Rosie and Tanya.
Yes.
Just sort of like friendships through the generations, like those ride or dies that are always there for you, that will be there for you in good times and in bad times. And like, I love that is a story that they're telling and celebrating. I think that's a wonderful takeaway. My overall takeaway, listen, I will be very honest, when we sat down to see this show together, it's probably about like halfway through the first act. I was sort of like, you know, arms crossed, like sitting back with like my, you know, I was very like theater critic about it all, and just very ready to be like, oh, well, like the set's like not that fancy, or oh, she's not hitting those notes tonight. And then, but I forget like what song it was. The songs are in alphabetical order in the playbill rather than in show order, but there's some moment a little over halfway through the first act where I was like, oh right, like it's Mamma Mia, like it's about having an effing good time, like, and if you're gonna come into this theater and like you're not ready to have a good time, like you're wasting your money, like what are you trying to prove to anyone, you know? So I think that there is room, certainly based on like all of like the beautiful thoughts you just said, of like there's some meat there, and also it's just like a fun time, you know?
It is.
Yeah.
Like you almost kind of stumbled into it a minute ago, but we haven't even talked about the hilarity that is in the end. Again, mild spoiler alert, but not a huge one. You know, the 3 possible dads pair off with people. So who do
they pair off with? I forget.
Well, so you have Rosie, who kind of pairs off with Bill Austin because they have this kind of highly sexualized romp during the wedding scene, where it turns out Rosie has always had a crush on him and vice versa, and she pursues him in a very modern way. So they kind of pair off. And then you have Sam and Donna, who I won't say too much, but pair off at the end. But then there's this hilarious leftover of Tanya and Harry, Headbanger Harry, who it's revealed during the plot that Harry is gay and has a partner.
That's right.
Back in London. So there's this kind of great, you know, affinity between Tanya, this multi-time divorcee, and then Harry, this gay man who's ended up at this wedding. And even like this camp queen and queer man kind of pair off at the end. And that's hilarious. And maybe truer to life than we care to admit. But like, they're just kind of pretty funny and modern themes that are explored that still kind of work now as well as they did in 99, and maybe better now because they're more culturally pervasive.
I agree, and I'd forgotten that about the revelation on Harry at the end, and I have to imagine that in like 99, and when it came to Broadway, that was, I don't know if I'll use the word progressive, but like that maybe it was like a little bit more progressive.
It was more
back
in your
then.
face, yeah.
Yeah, and then now when we receive that in 2025, it doesn't land the same. I'm not saying it lands badly. I'm just saying like it's no longer a shocking taboo.
Well,
yeah.
I've thought of that a few times over maybe the past 5 years that I've seen this show in various forms. There's all of this kind of ham-fisted script writing around this topic where he continually refers to like, well, I'm not sure my other half would agree.
Oh.
And is kind of cloaked about the fact that he's a gay man in a relationship with another man. At one point he says, well, I haven't put myself in the path of fatherhood.
What does that even mean?
I mean, I think then it meant that like gay people don't have kids, which obviously 26 years later, one, wasn't true in 1999, and two, and 26 years later, I think it's a lot more common than it was then too. But there are all these kind of bits of dialogue that I agree, like, I'm not sure anyone other than me is listening this closely, but like, those things haven't aged perfectly, because to your point, Andrew, it was like much more of a big reveal and like, oh, he's gay in 1999, and that was more novel then. And I think now it's like a non-event, and yet it's still written like it is an event, and you just kind of brush past it, I think, in the modern performance. Again, I don't think the average theater goer is thinking about it as deeply as I am, but that's kind of why I'm here.
They all should. They really all should. All right,
so write a masterclass on this.
I think you already have. We'll just get the transcript from this. We'll publish it. Perfect. So we are going into our final section, which is Should You See It? This is the section of the show where we give a final verdict and rating. So each episode of Critical Darling ends with this segment, and we just get to sort it into one of 4 distinct tiers. So I'm going to read for our listeners what those tiers are, and I will be honest with you, the intonation on these are just as important as the words. So the first rating is nah. What does nah mean? Nah means the show doesn't land. Catch it if you're curious, but your time and money might be better spent elsewhere. Next up, we have meh. Meh is truly a mixed bag. This show has some nice moments, but not quite enough to stick the landing. Then we have yas. Yas is a hearty yes. It delivers, it entertains, and it's well worth seeing, even if it doesn't totally change your life. And then we have reserved for the creme de la creme, hell yeah! And that is a full body standing ovation. You have to run, don't walk. This is why we love Broadway. So this rubric is fashioned to encourage conversation, not scorekeeping, and it reflects Critical Darling's mission to treat theater with both honesty and affection. Great. I'll let you give your ranking first, Ben.
I have to bifurcate my rankings
here
to say,
fair.
As a longtime viewer of Mamma Mia in its various forms, Mamma Mia as a whole is an absolutely hell yeah. I hope I got the intonation right.
You did.
If you haven't seen it, you need to see it. It's so fun. I think you can't go in thinking this is a serious piece of theater that's supposed to be a masterpiece. It's fun and camp and entertaining and a great way to hear ABBA music. And if somehow you've escaped ABBA music and aren't as familiar, it's a great introduction. So yes, Mamma Mia as a whole is a must-see musical. And, it is not just another jukebox musical by any means. To your point earlier, Andrew, it kind of, I think it was not the first, but it definitely is a prototype of sorts. And as far as I know, I think is probably the most commercially successful there is. This specific production, as a Mamma Mia connoisseur, I have to say is yes. I think see it. I wouldn't fly across the country to see this particular production. I have seen better productions of Mamma Mia, if I'm totally honest. But this was totally serviceable and for me, delivered everything that I was looking for. I was not embarrassed to have taken you to it on the night of the first premiere. And like, it's a good time and well done. Like, I hope that it's extended for another decade on Broadway and that they like throw some more money at the production of it and spiff it up a little bit. I'm also dying for the moment when they decide that it deserves a full and original revival where they let someone else get their hands on it and give it a different treatment. But you can also find that at regional theaters across the country.
It's like, are we waiting for that Jamie Lloyd revival of Mamma Mia, where like everyone?
I'm not sure if that's going to be the most successful, but I'd see it. I'd buy the ticket.
I would too. We're completely aligned. I'm a yas for this show for all the reasons mentioned. It's a hell of a good time. It has such heart. This cast is working their tushes off. It's back on home. It's back at home on Broadway in the Winter Garden, where so many people remember loving it for the first time. And it's like a cure for the winter blues, you know? Like if you are having a down in the dumps kind of day, week, moment, whatever, you can go to this show and it will turn your frown upside down if you let it. You have to go in with, you know, that sincerity and that heart and want that. But if you do, this is a good show for that. Wait, real quick before we like fully wrap up, are you a fan of the movies? I know that you had mentioned loving Cher and like loving the second one. Like, what's your take on the movies?
I think the movies are like a great idea. Like, do I think they're super high quality? No, but they are like movie musicals. So like, come on. But no, I've loved them. I don't think it's anything like seeing the show itself, but it's certainly a good time to watch these. And one thing that maybe I should have put in my upfront bio is that on vacation in Croatia, I'm a fan enough of Mamma Mia 2 that, or Here We Go Again, that I had our family take a detour on a Croatian vacation to go to an island on which one of the scenes in Mamma Mia 2 with Cher was filmed as like a Greek island, but it was cheaper for them to shoot in Croatia, so they did. So I have a whole photo series of myself on the island and on the very land where Mamma Mia 2 was shot for part of it.
That's amazing.
Or at least that's what the local tour guide said, but I've never fact-checked that or tried to verify it. So I'm just really going off this like skipper's word who happened to be porting us around from island to island.
Well, hopefully he had some integrity and wasn't completely duping you. I maintain that a fantastic evolution of what's happening at the Winter Garden right now, they need to do 2 shows in rep. They need to do Mamma Mia 1 4 times a week. Mamma Mia, Here We Go Again needs a stage adaptation and do that 4 times a week. And then kind of like they did when Harry Potter first came over of like, you can go for 2 or maybe 3 days of the week and do part 1 in the afternoon and part 2 in the evening, or then you can split it up. I know that's complicated ticketing wise.
That works so great for them.
You know what? It's a good idea. I think we need, and that's would then be, we would have Cher on Broadway, and she would only need to do it 4 times a week. So I feel great about it.
I think like Cher's enthusiasm for her tiny role in Mamma Mia 2, such that she produced an entire album of music that no one asked her for. She just said, this would be fun, I'm going to do it. And then she did a whole tour on it too. That alone says how infectious Mamma Mia can be for someone, even a seasoned pro like Cher, who is my diva supreme and obviously a living legend.
Did we see it together? I know, she's still kicking. We saw her together at Barclays Center, right?
Absolutely, yes.
The best drag show I've ever seen was the Cher concert tour for Dancing Queen. It was so good.
Those quick changes, those wigs,
all of
that choreo, like she is still going for it, and I love every second of it. Proud of her.
Touchdown. Ben, thank you so much for being here. You brought so much to this. I learned so much from you, and I love that you're my gateway drug to Mamma Mia. If our listeners want to learn more about you, where would they be able to find you?
Well, if you care to learn more about me, you can just go to my website. It's ben-grossman.com. But more importantly, and I think more of interest to your listenership, Andrew, is to learn more about my cat, Otis, who has a younger brother, Enzo, as well. But Otis, being the more mature of the 2 cats, has an entire career that he's embarked on where he's the creative director of his own fashion line. And he sells that fashion line at BuyOtis, BUYOTIS.com. And all proceeds go to the nonprofit animal rescue that rescued Otis and kept Otis in our life and rescues lots of other animals around the New York metro area and is saving lives every day. So if you're interested in seeing his fashion wares, go to BuyOtis.com.
I'm obsessed. I've met Otis before. He's a once-in-a-generation talent, and he takes after you, his father. You're a very successful and accomplished business person. Otis, I don't know where he finds the time to do it, but these new lines that he keeps pumping out are fashion-forward and a must for everyone. And the fact that it all goes to a good cause is just the cherry on top of the cake.
We're so proud of him, and he is so talented. And I would say that even if he wasn't my son.
I'll link it in the show notes. So, Ben, thanks for being here. I so appreciate you.
Thanks for having me, Andrew. What a joyful occasion, and best of luck with Critical Darling.
Alrighty, my darlings, that is our show for today. Thank you so much for listening. I'll let you in on a little peek behind the sequined curtain, as it were, on how I'm putting these shows together. I actually recorded that episode 2 months ago at this point with my friend Ben, and I was just listening back to it for the purpose of giving notes to my editor and making sure that's a very tight piece of content to package and deliver to you. And I was just struck anew by Ben's enthusiasm for this show, his zealousness and overall fandom about and knowledge of ABBA and Mamma Mia was just inspiring and delightful to re-listen to. So thank you again, Ben, for giving up your time and your expertise on all things Mamma Mia. It was great to have you on the show. I also wanted to call out, so a bit of housekeeping. I'm trying to release episodes of this show when the show is still running on Broadway. And that won't be possible for the entire season, mainly because I'm starting over halfway through the season. And once I get to some back catalog shows, I'll need to release some episodes for shows that have already closed. But in this particular instance for Mamma Mia, if this episode releases the day that I think it's releasing, you've only got 1 weekend left to see Mamma Mia in New York. So if you're based in New York, go get a ticket for Saturday or Sunday. But I also just checked the website, mammamiathetour.com, and the show's going back out on the road starting in March. So if you live in the States and you need some Mamma Mia in your life, please go support your local performing arts centers and go see Mamma Mia when it comes to your town. I think if I'm interpreting the website correctly, this cast may actually be going with it, ? At least they're listed on the website right now. So if you even want to see this cast that is currently dancing down the aisles at the Winter Garden, go check out the tour. Critical Darling is hosted and produced by me, Andrew Cole. Artwork is by Eric Emsch. Editing is by JH Productions. Music is by Standout. And a huge thanks to you, the listener, for listening to this episode and hopefully enjoying it. If you liked it, would you please do me a favor and tell a friend about it? Anyone who loves Broadway, anyone who likes entertainment or pop culture, that would mean so much to me. Go follow us, Critical Darling Pod, on Instagram or TikTok. You can tell me if I'm doing TikTok correctly as a stubborn millennial who has avoided it until now, but is diving in with reckless abandon. And please also go subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts and give it a 5-star review if you enjoyed it. So I look forward to seeing you next week, where we will be having a particularly tragic episode diving into the Broadway production of Oedipus. See you then.